Hello everybody, my name is Kata and welcome back to my kingdom. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how I resin casted these teeth. So of course, this method can be used to create really any shape or size that you want. So you do not have to make just little teeth like this. You can make a whole jaw set, you can make a tongue, you can make a nose, claws, really anything that you can think of. So it's really up to you on whatever shape and size you want this to be. But in this particular tutorial, I'm going to be making these teeth. So let's go ahead and list out all the things that I use in this video. So first things first, I used this modeling foam. This is a type of foam clay, so basically what happens is you'll take this out, it'll kind of act like clay, and then it will harden into something similar to this. It has a bit of give, and it kind of feels like EVA foam. So you can see here that it's squishy. Unlike clay, it does give, but the only problem is it is prone to tearing and ripping. And later on in the video, you'll see that I actually have some difficulties with this. So for the purposes of casting resin, you do not have to use this. This stuff is pretty expensive. You can use just regular air dry clay or any other kind of clay that you want to use. You do not have to use this, but this is what I wound up using in the video. The next thing you're going to need is something to actually make the mold out of. I opted for this stuff. It is available at Michael's. Actually, all of this stuff is available at Michael's, and it was relatively inexpensive, and it makes a relatively high quality mold. So this is what I was using. Really, any kind of mold putty will work. This is just the brand I happen to use. Same with the resin that I used. This is the brand that I happened to pick up. It is the same brand as the mold putty, but you don't have to use this. Don't mind the messed up box. I got it on clearance, so perfectly okay with getting some things on clearance. I will leave a link in the description to everything that I have in the video, but this particular type of resin actually dries white, so I did not have to paint this at all. If you're planning on doing something with resin and want it to be a different color than what it dries, you're going to have to buy resin dyes or something to put in the resin to get it to be whatever color you want it to be, or you're going to have to get paints for resin. But in this video, I'm not actually painting anything because it came out white. Alright, so that brings us to the end of the materials that we're going to need, so let's go ahead and jump into tools. So the first thing that you're going to need is measuring cups. If your pack of resin does not come with measuring cups, you're going to want to go and get little ones. If you plan on making something that's actually bigger than 2 of these cups, you're going to want to go out and buy bigger measuring cups than this, but little measuring cups so that you can measure out your parts for your resin. And then you're going to want something to actually stir that resin up. Resin comes in 2 parts and needs to be stirred up to actually get the parts mixed together real good. And you want to use something that you don't necessarily care about. So I used a plastic knife. I believe I used the handle of it. But this is something I don't really care about. If it gets destroyed or damaged, I can just throw it out. But you could realistically use like the handle of a paintbrush or a popsicle stick or something, but something to stir your resin. And then I don't have any with me right now, but I also like to protect my tables with something, so I actually use some old newspaper and some tape to protect the surface of my table, because resin and the modeling putty dries really weird and I didn't want to mess up the surface of my table. But that's kind of up to you on whether or not you want to protect your table, but I used just newspaper and tape and it worked really well. And that brings us to the end of the needed things for this video. Alright, so we're gonna go ahead and get started here. Basically what I'm doing is I am taking out the fursuit head that I plan to be making these teeth for, and I'm basically just kind of getting a general size for the mouth so that I know where the teeth can and can't go. You want to make sure that when you're actually making your teeth that it fits in the mouth that you're making it for. So you see me here cutting out a paper template so I get a basic idea of how big the mouth is. This step isn't necessarily required, but I do find it easier to do this. One, just because I was planning on actually making a base for these teeth to sit on, hence the black EVA foam I have in my hand. I wound up scrapping that idea because I wound up not needing it. The teeth were fine on their own, because I just didn't know how the foam clay was going to handle being without a base. So I was just preparing to have a base. That's another reason why I was marking out the space for the mouth. I wound up not needing it. It's really up to you whether or not you want to pattern something out like this. You can always just put the teeth in the mouth and see how they fit, but I didn't want to mess up the lining in the mouth, so I used paper pattern. I've just gone through and taken out a section of clay, so I didn't have to go through just dig out a whole ton. So I just took a little section out, and you can see me here. I'm starting to kind of make the first canine. I wasn't sure exactly what kind of teeth I wanted, so I went here and started to look up references. It's very important that you have references. I've said this in the past, but having references really help. I don't think I would have had as nice of a teeth if I hadn't had references. Now I'm making the second canine. I just want it to be as similar to the first one as I can. And then I watched on a few tutorials that a little bit of water helps with the modeling clay. I realized very quickly that that was not true. That too much water is not good because it actually really makes it sticky. So I had to go and reform everything because it started to stick to my fingers. So I would not recommend nearly as much water as I put on my finger, but a little bit helps. Just a tiny bit. And you can see me going through and dabbing my finger into the water and then drying off my hand a little bit so that I don't have nearly as much water as before. So I was not sure if I wanted to do just the bottom canines or maybe more teeth. You'll see me going through and fiddling with different teeth arrangements. I actually really liked these canines, so they were a part of the final project. Now that they're even, I started to go through and kind of curve them outward. Teeth are not perfectly straight. They kind of curve out and up and back a little teeny bit. I just kind of imitated that look of curving outward and upward. So now I'm taking my pattern piece and I'm actually tracing out that piece on the EVA foam. This is when I still believe that I was actually going to be making a base. So I'm going through and being really careful with cutting this EVA foam to make sure that it looked really nice, because I believe that it was going to be part of the final project. I'm doing a few test fits, and I actually don't really like the way it fit, so I'm going through and kind of trimming it up a little bit more. Like I said, I thought it was going to be part of the final project, so I just wanted it to look really good. This was kind of wasted for nothing because it did not end up in the final, but that's okay. Now I'm going through and just kind of fitting the teeth on to this base. And now I am taking a section of the foam clay. I'm kind of making the little teeth that go in between the two canines. I thought that maybe I might just leave them smooth. It would kind of give the suit a little more of a toony look, but I realized that it looked a little too simple. So what I did is I actually took a little sewing needle, like a pin, and I actually started to kind of indent in between where all the teeth would have gone. So there's actually 4 little teeth that look like individual teeth, but they're actually all one piece. So this is something that you need to take into consideration when you are making your own teeth, or anything out of clay or foam clay for that matter, is you can use tools that are not a part of like a clay tool set. You don't have to have clay working tools in order to work with this stuff. It makes it a little easier, but you certainly don't need to, and you can improvise to create your own textures and stuff. So I'm just going through and doing that. The foam does expand a bit, so you'll see me go back again and again and kind of just reinforce those indents, just because the foam does expand a little as it dries, and I wanted to make sure that it stayed. Now I'm using a little bit of water to kind of make the teeth sticky again so that I can stick them together. This wound up being really effective, that I didn't have to glue them together, which made it look a lot more seamless. I actually wound up not needing the base, because they actually stuck together super well. You'll see me kind of talking to something off in the corner. This is because I do a lot of live streams, and while I was recording this video, I was actually live streaming. So I'll leave a link in the description to more information on where you can see my live streams if you're interested. You'll get a lot more personalized information from them, because most of the time they are also Q&A live streams. So I recommend if you have a really specific question you wanted to ask me, go ahead and join one of my live streams. Now you'll see me here kind of test fitting the teeth in the mouth. I want to make sure that they look good before I finalize them. So I'm kind of looking at it when it's closed, when it's open, and they kept falling out, which I found really annoying, but we can work with it. Now I'm answering a few questions about the suit. I try to edit out most of the talking I do on my live streams, but again, I'm kind of doing it all throughout the entire process, so it's difficult to remove it all the time. You can see I kind of take that needle and just kind of reinforce those indentations. Now I'm going to put my teeth back in. Now I'm going to look at it when the mouth is open and the teeth are in. It's important to kind of just look at all angles and get a good idea of what they look like when actually in or on the suit. Now what I'm going to start doing here is actually experiment with adding more teeth into this suit. I was not sure how much teeth I really wanted, and I noticed that Drickybuses have, or Drickybi, however you say the plural of this word, but I noticed that this species does have prominent canines on the top of their mouths. So I'm going through here and testing it out. I thought it looked okay, but I was afraid that when the mouth closed, they would scrape together or not touch. And then when I was really looking at it, I decided to scrap this idea entirely. A little bit later on, you will see that I start to kind of make some back teeth, some teeth that are like some molars that are a little bit further back in the mouth. All of these other teeth just kind of made the mouth look really cluttered, and it just kind of ruined the look I was going for. For this suit, I really wanted it to look super cute, and adding a bunch of teeth just kind of ruined the cute look for me. So having the front teeth were good, but having all the other teeth in the mouth were just a little too much. So you'll see a little bit later on, I'm testing this out, I'm looking at it, but it just doesn't look right. So I decided to not do that, and I mash the clay back up before it dries and just put it away. At this point, I am now going through and reinforcing the indents between the 4 front teeth again. I do this several times just to make sure that they stay individual looking and don't kind of become one long strip. Editing Kata here. I needed to explain something. So, my goal for these videos is to show you the cold, hard truth of making a fursuit head. It's not all rainbows and sunshine. I do not plan to sugarcoat this in any way. I show you all of the mistakes that I make, all of the ways I fix those, and I need to explain what's going to happen between the clip that you just watched and the clip that's about to happen, between what happened outside of my workroom and past the camera. I made these foam teeth. They're really good. They look cool. They're nice and they're soft. But I found out that they are not water resistant. They're not even close to it. Just a little bit of water and these things are going to disintegrate. And that's a problem, because the mouth of a fursuit is actually probably one of the most heavily trafficked area for water. Because most of the time people will be putting a water bottle in the mouth of a fursuit to drink while they're wearing the suit. The mouth needs to be cleaned. Your breath even will have condensation that will damage these teeth. And because the teeth are going to basically melt, they're going to damage the inside of the mouth, they're going to damage the jaw of the fursuit, and I just don't want that. So I've really got to figure out an alternative to this, because this is my test. You can see it. It's gross. It fell apart. Like, it looked like this. This is what it looked like before. I made a bunch of pieces, and I made a bunch of tests and did a bunch of stuff off camera to try and fix this problem. And none of them worked. So I had to figure out a different method in which I was going to do. and one of the only things I could think of was to cast these teeth in resin. That would make them smooth and hard and waterproof. They would be waterproof, not even water resistant. So they could get completely soaked and they would be just fine. One problem is I've never actually made anything out of resin, so this entire thing, the next thing you're going to see is me doing this for the first time. And I'm not going to claim otherwise, that I have done anything with resin before, other than buying pre-made pieces and cutting them to fit them the way I want. I have not made anything with resin. I have worked with resin, pre-made parts that were sent to me, and so I've cut resin bases and horns and stuff, but I've never actually casted the resin myself. I won't lie about that. This was kind of a daunting task. You will see in the next clip that was actually successful. I lucked out. That is not always true for you, depending on what you're doing. So I wish you luck in your future crafting, and let's go ahead and see what I do next. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm pulling out some newspaper here because resin and other things are messy and I don't want to ruin my table. So this is where I'm taking out the newspaper and some tape and just making a little workspace to protect my table. I actually got a little distracted by what was on the paper, but I realized it was from 2017 and I can't use any of these coupons anyway, so I'm just using some painter's tape. It really doesn't matter what kind of tape you use. I was just making sure that the crease in the middle had no openings, just so that nothing could get in between the two pieces of paper and ruin my table on accident. Alright, so now I'm pulling out the mold putty. This stuff is what's going to actually create the mold that I will be pouring the resin into. This can be used over and over and over again. I could make multiple sets of these teeth if I wanted. I might do that in the future. I'm not sure what I have planned for this mold, but I certainly can. Now I'm going to go through and read the instructions. I skipped over me actually reading the instructions, but it's very important to read them, but I don't think you need, you know, like a minute and a half of me reading instructions. I keep them next to me so I can continue to refer to them over and over just in case, because I am nervous about doing this. So, lucky me, this stuff is a 1-to-1, so I go through and just scoop a bit out that I think I'll need. Because this is a 1-to-1, I know that I'm going to wind up with twice as much as I will have for the one part. So I pull out about half of what I think I'll need, and then I take the other little container and I kind of just eyeball a very similar sized piece. I kind of make them a similar shape so I can get them to be as close as possible. I realize I need a little bit more of the yellow and I scoop it out. And then I start to just kind of separate it. It has to be really well mixed, and you don't have very long. I only have about 30 or 40 seconds to make sure it's really well mixed. So now you'll see that it's a relatively consistent color, and I just go ahead and place it on top of the teeth. I flip it over and over just to make sure that the bottom, technically the top of the mold, is flat, so that when I actually pull the teeth out and go to pour the resin, it has a flat surface to sit on the table with, so that when I pour the resin, it doesn't wind up being tilted or spilling over. I just kind of go through and make it a reasonable shape. I don't want it to be too ridiculously big in comparison to the teeth, so I just kind of work it. Now I'm going to go through and actually pull the foam teeth out. I'm being very careful because I want to actually still have the teeth available, the original available, just in case the mold messes up or the resin messes up. Now I'm going through and just kind of examining it to make sure that it's correct. I'm just making sure that there's no foam still inside of the mold or anything. There's no obvious imperfections, so I don't waste any resin. I determined that it actually is okay, so I'm gonna go through and put away my mold putty and then start pulling out the resin. Again, the resin is also in a 2-part mixture, and this stuff is also a 1-to-1 ratio. I realized that I need something to be able to stir the resin with because, unlike the putty, it's actually a liquid, and I don't want that all over my fingers, so I go and I get some plastic knives so that I can throw it away afterwards if it winds up being too gross and too sticky. And again, I read the instructions and I leave them next to me really nice and handy so that I make sure that I don't screw anything up as I go. So I realized that I probably needed some kind of napkins or something, so I go and get some tissues just in case it spills. I'm happy I did that because you'll see a little bit later on I really needed them. But yeah, I'm going through and opening the other half so I can pour the other half. And I made a slight oopsie. I poured probably twice as much as I needed for this mold. I didn't even realize. I thought the mold was a lot deeper than it actually was. So I wound up pouring like twice as much as I needed, but oh well, it wound up working, I guess, pretty fine. So now I pour the one half into the other half and I take my knife and I start to stir it. You gotta really make sure that it's stirred, really well. And then I go to pour it, and I realize that it quickly overfilled. So I take my tissues and I start to kind of clean it up a bit. I want to make sure that there isn't a whole bunch of extra resin on the outside of the mold, just because I don't want the bottom of the teeth to be really, really rough or anything. I want it to be relatively smooth so that they look good. And I don't want a bunch of extra at the bottom that I'm going to have to sand away or anything. Just the less work, the better. You'll see here that you actually can watch the resin, cure. It goes from clear to white. It's super amazing to watch. I love it. So now I'm going through and kind of cleaning up a bit. I actually was able to save that knife, so I'm going to save it for a future project. This only takes this whole process took me only a couple of hours from making the mold to finishing the resin thing. The mold, putty, and the resin actually cures really quick in a matter of, 30 minutes. So I just kind of sat here with it and watched it. You have to be very careful that while the resin is cooling, it does get really hot. It is a chemical reaction, so you need to be careful. But other than that, it doesn't get too hot, but it could definitely still burn you a little if you're not careful. And I promise that I am still doing things. I'm just sitting here on my phone. I'm probably posting pictures of this to my social medias. I will leave a link in the description to those social medias where you can actually get some work in progress photos way earlier than these videos come out. I pretty much post the work in progress photos and TikTok videos pretty much right after I do something. So either the day after or the day of, I will be posting them. So if you want to keep up to date with everything that I'm doing, or even things that I don't post onto YouTube, certainly go and follow my social medias. Again, I'll leave a link in the description to those. So you see here, I'm touching it and just kind of testing it. This extra little piece that came out of my cup that was way more resin than I needed, I kind of used that as my test piece for whether or not it was ready to pull. And you can see me going through and slowly but surely pulling it out. And there it is. It actually came out super good and I was super happy with it. You can see me leave. I'm actually going to go show somebody it. Then I come back with both pieces. The original piece and the casted one. You can see the difference between them. It's very difficult to tell. I can't actually tell which is which in the camera. But yeah, here is the final product. I absolutely love the way it came out. I do not have to paint it or do anything just because I got the white resin version and I'm just super happy with these. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did and you are not already subscribed to me, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and then hit the little bell so you get notified when I post videos. But until next time, guys, remember, my name is Kata, and you are always welcome back in my kingdom.